Hey guys, this is Andre Touchy Feely. You listen to the Verbal Scrap Podcast. Let's get weird.
This is the Shark, Anthony Avila. You listen to Verbal Scrap.
This is Justin the Raw Deal Basement. You listen to Verbal Scrap.
This is Nan Fan, and you're listening to the Verbal Scrap Podcast. I'm a fighter. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to fight.
Hey, this is Dave Hirschbein, MMA Gold, and you're listening to Verbal Scrap.
I've worked so hard to do what I got to do in here. I took so much blood for this sport. I took so much pain, everything for the sport.
Hey, y'all, this is Eat Johnston. You're listening to SRMMA.com Verbal Scrap. Stay tuned. They got some good stuff coming up.
We are here on the 51st episode of the Verbal Scrap Podcast. This is your host, Jay Wah. Today in studio, we got a lot of news coming up from Tachi Palace from West Coast Fighting, as well on the Verbal Scrap Podcast. You're listening now on srmma.com, or you can check us out by downloading us on iTunes or on Facebook, facebook.com/srmma. First, I wanted to get something really quick out there for you guys. Thursday, November 14th, is the return of Tachi Palace Fights, once again to Lemoore, TPF 17, and we got some huge news for you. Their former champion, Anthony A-Train Ruiz, is going to be taking on a former tough finale contestant, and there's much, much more coming from that. We were able to chit-chat with Anthony Ruiz. I wanted to once again play the full interview for you guys so you have an understanding about Hart and Ruiz coming up November 14th. This is Jay Watt from SRMMA.com. We're here on the Verbal Scrap Podcast talking to the West Coast Fighting Light Heavyweight Champion, Anthony A-Train Ruiz. How you doing today, my friend?
Pretty good, man.
I wanted to chit-chat with you. Got some big Tachi Palace news, but had some other thoughts I wanted to chit-chat with you about as well. Obviously, you're going to be back at Tachi Palace. What does it mean to you to be working with those guys again?
It's nice, man. I love the whole venue. I love being in Lemoore at Tachi Palace. They really hook it up, so I'm excited.
Well, they recently told us you're going to be fighting Colin Hart. That's an interesting matchup considering, you being such an experienced veteran, but he does have that tough 17 experience on a national stage. What do you think about the matchup when it was first proposed to you?
I feel pretty confident about it. He's I think he's like 23, 24, so he's kind of young. I know he's coming out of Dave Terrell's camp, and so I'm expecting him to try to take me down and submit me, but I'm excited.
Well, I wanted to ask you about your traveling lately. You've been going all over the world, fighting in Russia and back here. What has that been like for you? Is that something that you enjoy doing, going anywhere in the world to fight?
Oh man, it's been a dream come true, man. Russia was just like the best thing that's ever happened as far as fighting goes. I'm always willing to go somewhere. I've been real lucky, man. I've had some good things happen to me, and so I'm just taking them one step at a time, and going at it.
Well, recently you had lost your Tachi Palace title, but it was an epic bout. Do you feel like a Colin Hart matchup in the organization puts you right back in that mix? And is that something you are aspiring to do in your career? Are you interested in getting the Tachi title back anytime in the future?
Sure. I'd love to, man. Yeah, I think another win here will definitely put me back in that situation. Maybe even two. Angel Deanda is who I lost the belt to, and so it could happen a year from now, or he's also signed on with another organization.
The World Series.
I'm not sure if he'll still be around, but I would love to have the chance to fight him again, for the belt.
Well, this coming matchup against Colin Hart, let's talk a little bit more about him. He's a guy, he's got 3 submission victories, TKO win, but both of his losses have come by decision. So he seems like a guy that you're going to have to take him all the way to the final bell to really pull out a decision. Do you feel like your experience gives you more than anything maybe he's seen in the cage? Do you feel like you'll be able to be a guy to finish it before the judges?
Yeah, I think I can finish it. I know he's aggressive. He always comes out strong. I feel like the experience that I've had and the amount of rounds that I've done, and the amount of cage time that I've had just exceeds so much that I've learned to almost like take him out in the deep waters and kind of drown him. I'm good at overwhelming people. most of the time. You know what I mean? I'm not taking anything away from the kid. I know his stuff. You know, I plan to use my experience, and I know he's got a few fights. You know, he's like 6-2, so he's young and he's aggressive, and I don't really think that he's used to my type of fighting.
Well, I only had two more things for you. You've gone 5-2 your last 7 bouts. You're obviously a West Coast champion. You haven't competed for them in a while. They've been able to grow their brand. A lot of guys come out of their organization and go to bigger shows and stuff like that. I was interested in if you had any thoughts about defending your West Coast title anytime in the future.
Well, I'd love to, actually. I talk to Brendan as often as I can, and I'm always willing to defend my title. I would actually love to. Before this fight was arranged, I was hitting Brandon up trying to get him to get me a fight so I could defend it. You know, I think sometimes it's hard to find the right matchups, you know, but I think Brandon is trying, and when he's ready, I'll be ready. Well,
last thing I wanted to ask you, you know, at your career, like you've been doing a lot of fights all over the world, like we had said. You've been able to win multiple titles. What's driving you now? What's on the horizon for you? Where are you hoping to go right now? I'm just trying to have fun, man. I mean, actually, I know I'm not UFC material. I mean, in my heart and in my mind, I think I am, but you know, I'm like 35. As far as the UFC goes, they're looking at me being 35. You know, my record is 30-18, and so I'm not exactly the right draw they're looking for. You know, and so at this point, I'm just looking to just have fun, and I love getting in the cage, and I love banging hard, and I love getting hit, and I love hitting people, you know. So I'm just I'll continue that as long as I can. So I've got probably 2 or 3 more years left. Well, you can check out srmma.com for more of that information, because you know we'll be down there for Tachi Palace. It'll be good to see Anthony Ruiz, Colin Hart going at it. That's going to be an epic matchup in the division for Tachi Palace, and hopefully we'll be able to see you defend that West Coast fighting title sometime down the road. I wanted to give you a chance to give thanks and shout-outs before we let you go.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I'd like to give a shout-out to Team Ruiz Fight Management. He's been hooking me up fat, 5150 energy drink, and my camp, Dethrone Base Camp in Fresno. If it wasn't for these people, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Thank you.
Find SRMMA's Verbal Scrap podcast on iTunes and at srmma.com. Once again, that fight's going to be taking place on November 14th. Check out Tachi Palace Fights for ticket information. Also, Team Ruiz Fight Management is reporting that Papis Martinez as well as Isaac DeJesus have signed long-term deals with the management company and have also been signed to fight in Bellator, the details in which have not yet been given. But Papis Martinez, current lightweight champion of Tachi Palace Fights, and Isaac DeJesus have signed long-term deals with them. Moving forward, you most likely be seeing those guys in the Bellator cage. For you guys that don't know, Jamie JARA, fresh off a big win at Gladiator Challenge, the man has gone 23-4 in his career over that time in Gladiator Challenge, an epic record. You can read more right now on srmma.com and see the fight video of his recent victory, courtesy of 5150 Fightwear. We were able to chit-chat with him. You heard the highlights, but let's now hear the full interview with Jamie El Kukui JARA. It's Jwa from srmma.com here on the Verbal Scrap Podcast. Got a special guest in studio, Jamie JARA. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Pleasure to finally have you on the show. This is one of our 50th show clips, so epic to have you here, especially after the GC win, recently becoming super fight champ. I mean, what was it like to once again compete in the GC cage?
You know, I always enjoy fighting for a Gladiator Challenge, especially because they have like fights close to home, and I always get to fight in front of all my fans. So it's always a pleasure to fight for them.
That's something I was going to ask you about throughout your career, obviously, getting your start in Gladiator Challenge. What's it like to, you know, keep coming full circle with those guys? You've been with them since you were younger and throughout your entire career.
Mainly, I enjoy just fighting in my own backyard, and because all my fans are here, so, you know, it's always nice to do that. And that's a big part of the reason why I always fight for GC is because I get to fight in my backyard.
like, you're going to be at Carnage MMA doing your classes for a long time, and a lot of fans are interested in how to get in touch with you, how to get more jits training from you. So what times are your classes? What's a good way for people that are interested to maybe join up with you guys and get some of your knowledge?
They can come to my Facebook page. It's under my name, Jamie Hara, or they can go to our website. It's teamcarnagemma.com. They can look up the address there and the phone numbers if they need to call. But, we teach boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. We teach it all. So if there's something for everybody there.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the GC win, your last victory. It looked like you were able to pull out some slick jints once again. I mean, what'd you think about how quickly, you were able to do your thing? Coming back, you've been able to pull out a couple wins at GC. I mean, what's it like moving forward from what you just did inside the cage?
It's been a few years before I've lost a fight in GC, so it's always nice to fight for GC. I've got a good winning streak going there. That was a good warm-up fight. I'd like to, coming back from Russia off that loss, I felt like I got robbed by the ref. So I was kind of like down on that. And then I come back and win that fight in GC. It kind of erased all that for me. So now I'm ready to just get back into training and go to the next one.
I wanted to ask you about culture shock, being in Russia or anything like that. Were you there long enough to experience anything that stood out to where you really knew, besides obviously weather or being freezing cold maybe? What was something while you were there that kind of let you know, I'm definitely not at home?
The people, nobody spoke English there. It was hard to communicate with anybody. Our money was no good there. We try to buy stuff. They wouldn't even accept our money. We tried to exchange it. It was really hard. It was rough with nobody speaking English. We had no money to buy anything, so we were kind of like, we were at the mercy of the people we're staying with. So
I wanted to ask you about your beginnings, your pro debut back in 2002, Gladiator Challenge. You got a quick sub, but what were you thinking being so young in the sport, getting into it where you were? I mean, what were your thought processes after you got a win like that and being set as a pro?
It's crazy. Back in the day, it was a lot different. People train harder. They're a lot more skilled now. Back then, they would pull people out of the crowd, the drunk guys, to come in and fight in the cage. It was a lot different back then. The mindset, the training, everything, it was totally different.
Well, I wanted to ask you something about 2007. It's kind of a time thing for me. Back then, I watched a UFC 73 here in Sacramento. It was stacked. It had Anderson Silva on it. Tito Rashad was on there. And I noticed at that time in your career, you had just gone on a big fat winning streak. You were winning quite a bit, had done a lot in GC. Back then, what were your thoughts on the UFC and where it was and kind of where you were? Was that something that you were hoping to get into, or how did you see them from where you were at?
I always looked to get on any show that would pay me money, and whether that was the Gladiator Challenge or UFC or Strikeforce or whatever, I was just looking to make some money so I could pay my bills. That's, that was the thing to me.
Well, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on some of the guys that you've competed with and against. Who would you say would be one of the hardest hitters you've been inside the cage with?
I'd have to say Scott Smith. He hit pretty hard. Hands of steel. There you go. He hit hard.
Well, that actually brings me to a thought I was thinking. You fought him a couple times. Those are some epic battles. A couple guys like Anthony Ruiz, you've been able to kind of have his number. What do you feel about how styles make fights? I mean, do you feel like when you do get a victory over someone, does it make it easier if you fight him again? When you lose to someone, does it make it harder to fight him again? What's the thought process behind that?
I think on any given night, anybody can beat anybody. It just depends on, where your head's at. I think that has a lot to do with how it affects the outcome of the fight. If you get in somebody's head and you're in their head, you got half the fight won already. I believe that styles do matter. If you get a good wrestler that can take a good striker down and nullify his striking, that style is a bad matchup for that striker. Wrestlers are pretty much bad matchups for jiu-jitsu guys and strikers. You got to find somebody that's really well-rounded to be able to make a good fight.
I wanted to ask you about the UFC because obviously they have a statute of making fights happen that fans want to make happen. So they've been putting it out as often as possible. I wanted to know your thoughts about the expansion of MMA. You can go watch MMA now on Wednesday nights, Saturday nights. I mean, do you think that there will ever become a saturation of the sport, like fans won't like it, or are you just overall really happy with the growth?
I think that there's shows out there, they put shitty cards together, and the fans are going to stay away from those cards, but there's always going to be the good ones that people are going to want to see. I think it's just like any other thing, you know. They have good boxing matches and they have crappy boxing matches, but they're always going to want to see the top level guys fight. And I believe that to be true with the MMA also.
Well, I wanted to know your thoughts about some of the big matchups you've been involved with, like Justin Baseman, Scott Smith, Carter Williams, Rashad Evans, Doug Marshall. These are big-name guys that you've competed against. Which one of those guys or any other guys that you've gone against are you most surprised by maybe the way their career went, you know, since the time you faced them inside the cage?
Probably, you know, Doug Marshall. I don't know. I didn't like the outcome of that fight, you know, and how the judges scored it, but they gave him the win, and that's fine. He won that fight, and I see that he's doing really well at Bellator. He knocked a lot of guys out. He's doing really good. It looks like he's gotten a lot better since then, and, you know, all the props out to him.
Well, I wanted to know your thoughts about some of the jits you've seen inside the cage recently. Some of the big guys, Korean Zombie pulls out a twister, you know. It seems like a lot of athletes are using more interesting techniques as far as jiu-jitsu is concerned. You being a guy that teaches it, it's some of your bread and butter. What do you think about where it is in the sport? Do you think it's overutilized, underutilized? Do you think there's more techniques that people can be using?
I think that some of those, you know, really flamboyant techniques that them guys are using to submit other people, it's on guys that really aren't that great at jiu-jitsu, you know, and then they can pull those kind of moves off, which is great, you know. It looks awesome when it's done, you know. But it's a lot harder to do something like that when you get two skilled guys at jiu-jitsu. It's going to be really a lot harder to submit them, and it's going to, you know, nullify both their attacks a lot more. So it's a lot better when you get a guy that's really high-level jiu-jitsu, and he's going against somebody that doesn't know anything at all. He's going to be able to pull out his whole bag of tricks and use it on that guy, you know.
Well, I was interested in your thoughts on some of the bigger name champions out there, and most of them are really high-class strikers. You know, Anderson Silva, former champion, high-class striker. John Jones, high-class striker. Jose Aldo, high-class striker. They also have shown a really good base as far as wrestling is concerned. How do you think that someone will go about beating these guys? Is it by beating them at their own game, or would you say it's by beating them on the ground?
I don't know. I see John Jones, and he looks really good on the ground. It's about the wrestlers, especially the wrestlers that have really good submission defense. That they're hard to submit and they're hard to do anything with because their base is so strong and then their cardio is so good. They just keep coming and going and going. You know, it's going to be hard to beat somebody like that.
Well, for the fans that are interested in learning more jits techniques. I see you put out videos all the time. You said you had a YouTube account. I checked some of them out. They're really actually helpful. If you're ever rolling around with your friends, you can feel really smart, you know, say that Jamie taught you something that you saw on YouTube. But is your thought process about putting those out, you know, for your classes, or are they for just anyone to check them out? I mean, what are your thoughts on people getting that knowledge?
I just put it out there to, people surfing the YouTube and they look, and they can reference something, and it's also for my students, you know, when they want to come back and revisit a technique that I taught, they can use that to do also. But it also helps us, you know, get my name out there and get other people looking at what I'm doing and get them interested in maybe, you know, coming into the gym and learning.
Well, a lot of people in the area obviously have a wealth of respect for what you've done inside the cage. Where are you feeling at in your career now? What's on your horizon? What are you looking forward to doing? What's driving you at this moment? Being back at GC, you just picked up the title with them. You've been with those guys for a while, have a great record with them. Where do you want to go right now? What are you hoping to do?
Right now, I just, you know, I'm trying to build my school up and, you know, build my student base up. And because that's, you know, when I retire, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be teaching. But, you know, I still got a few more fights in me, and I'd love to, you know, get a couple bigger paydays, you know, before
Money
I
talks.
quit.
Well, I wanted to also ask you for guys that come across injuries, it's really easy for them to give up or slack off. You've obviously dealt with a wealth of injuries in your career and come back to be victorious and put on big streaks. What do you say that you do well as far as overcoming injuries, and what's some advice you might give to people that are still young in the sport dealing with those things?
Man, I stay injured. I think I get rid of the injury and I pick up 2 more. It's mind over matter, man. You just got to block it out and just keep driving. I stay hurt all the time, it's crazy, but I got to do it, That's my job, and that's what I get paid to do, so I can't stop doing it. I have to.
Well, inside the cage, what would be one of your moments in which you felt like it was the most you were able to take from a fight and learn? Not just, a memorable moment for you, maybe not your best win, but what's one fight or maybe a couple fights or maybe a battle that you actually took the most from and felt like you grew the most from?
Every time I lose a fight, I learn a lot from it, every time. I learn something different from every loss. I've learned something, and I can't say that I've learned more from one than the other, but I always take something back from my losses, and I look back and I try to correct those mistakes so I don't make those same mistakes again.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, in GC, are there any particular matchups being a super fight champ that you're hoping to get? Do you think that there are any draws or names out there that might bring you the paydays you're looking for or the big names that you're looking for?
Probably not in GC, but maybe on one of the bigger shows. There's more money out there to be got, and hopefully I can string a few more wins together and go back and fight on one of those bigger shows and get paid a little bit more money.
Well, we're here. We're talking to Jamie Jara on the Verbal Scrap Podcast. Just a few more quick things for you. Obviously, MMA being as young as it is, it doesn't have the generational feel to it. But I feel like we've gotten to some point where there is kind of, there was an old school MMA and kind of a new school MMA. How do you feel like some of the newer athletes that are so young in the sport, how do you feel they're dealing with taking MMA forward? Do you feel like they're doing it correctly? Do you feel like there's maybe a newer attitude that they should also adhere to from older, more experienced veterans?
I think it's a lot different than it was back then. I mean, when I started, I was fighting in 8-man tournaments. I was fighting 3 times in one night. It's a lot different. But I think that nowadays everybody's having to train harder and they're having to put more work in because everybody's getting better faster. And if you're not training, you're not going to win fights.
Well, one of the last things I wanted to ask you, coming from every fight you've gone through and experiencing all the new growth you've gone through after every win, every loss, what's maybe one or some of the things that you had a perception of coming into the sport that you've maybe grown or thought differently about now?
Probably the training. Before when before, I would train 3 or 4 days a week, and I thought that was enough, But nowadays, like I said, if you're not training every day and you're not doing everything right every minute, that's the thing about fighting. It's not a job that you go to and then when you're done training, you come home and it's done. No, it's 24 hours a day. You have to train. You have to eat right. You have to go to bed at a certain time. You have to be, your mind has to be right for that whole training cycle. It's a 24-hour thing, and it's a mindset. And if you don't have the right mindset, then, you shouldn't be fighting.
Well, I wanted to give you an opportunity, like we give everybody else, to give thanks, shout-outs, maybe any last issues or thoughts on your mind you'd like to give. This is an opportunity for you. Go ahead.
I just want to shout out to my team, Carnage, and, my coach, Mike Rumsey, and everybody over at Casio Wernick's Jiu-Jitsu for, helping me, push for all the fights that I do, and all my teammates and all my training partners. I just want to say thanks.
Well, check out the YouTube account to get more inside details on the Jits game. Like I said, you can wire your friends or you can go and take them to classes, which you can also take at Carnage MMA. So check out the website, get more information, and also check out srma.com for more details. It was a pleasure to have you in studio. I wish you the best, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
We are back on the 51st episode of the Verbal Scrap Podcast. I want to give a shout-out to all the fans that share our work, like our work, and support us. It means a lot. It propels us to do much more. We got so much coming for you by the end of this year, as well as big things coming in 2014. So thank you guys for downloading us on iTunes, as well as following us on all our social media, and totally appreciated by everyone here on the staff. Some news from around the globe. MMA Junkie is reporting that Luke Rockhold is out due to knee injury, and CB Dollaway will meet Tim Boesch at UFC 166. They also report that Michael Johnson will be taking on Gleason Tebow in a lightweight bout set for UFC 168. And in some big news for Sacramento, Joseph Benavidez out of Team Alpha Male, Ultimate Fitness downtown Sacramento, is once again going to be competing against Demetrius Johnson at the Tough 18 finale. Once again, Joseph Benavidez will fight Demetrius Johnson one more time at the Tough 18 finale. So check that out. Also from MMA Fighting, Royce Gracie has reportedly said that he believes Kira Gracie would defeat Ronda Rousey. A quote from the website, quote, Royce Gracie is not a big fan of female MMA, but he would like to watch Kira Gracie fighting in the UFC. If she never does the transition to the octagon, if she ever does the transition to the octagon, the UFC veteran believes she has what it takes to dethrone Ronda Rousey. Once again, MMA Fighting reports Royce Gracie believes Kira Gracie would beat Ronda Rousey, and also Bloody Elbow reports an interesting quote from UFC champion Jon Jones, who apparently watched the Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo Alvarez boxing match, which we will discuss more with some of our guests, including our musical guest, once again, Legion's Requiem, going to be on the show. We're going to be playing a tune for you, Into the Mouth of Madness. But Jon Jones was quoted as discussing the payout for Floyd Mayweather, which was actually reported at $40 million, I believe. So Bloody Elbow got a quote. I find it interesting. Jon Jones, quote, boxing has been around over 100 years. The foundation is set and the money is there. MMA is so new, you can't just expect to be paid. If we're going to be paid $40 million, what is the UFC going to make? Floyd is his own production. We're a fairly new sport. I'm grateful for the money I make. As a 26-year-old, I can never imagine being in this position. I don't think money is the key to life or happiness. I find that very, very telling from the UFC champ Jon Jones, an interesting perspective on the amount of money that Floyd Money Mayweather was able to make. Once again, we'll be talking about that more with our musical guest, Legion's Requiem, who you can also find on Facebook and on Reverb Nation. I talked with him more with our musical guest, Legion's Requiem, as well as more about their music and their upcoming show in Oakland. So let's now listen to the full interview with Legion's Requiem. JYSRMMA.com on the Verbal Scrap Podcast, here with our musical guest this week on the 51st show, Legion's Requiem. How you doing today, folks?
Hey!
That's the band, in case you did not know.
That's two of us.
So, two of them. We got Ben, the drummer, in studio with guitar Scott Moda. Let's talk first about your big show coming up in Oakland. You guys are going to be at the Screams of Metal 2 tour. It's a 2-day event. Tell us more.
That's a fatty. It'll be at the Continental Club in Oakland. And we'll be playing that Sunday, October 20th, with a bunch of bands. I guess the big headliner there is Ex Mortis. But I'll be doing double duty with Legion's Requiem and Dire Peril also.
So tell us about that, Mr. Double Duty. You play in multiple bands. How is that as a musician and dealing with your life?
Oh, it flat out sucks. I don't have a life.
Scott, tell us more about this Oakland event. You got 2 days. You guys are obviously going to be playing Sunday, but all the bands there, what are you hoping that this does for the scene as far as being in the Bay Area and cultivating your sound in front of these people?
Well, this is us trying to get out of Sacramento. Not so much that we don't like playing in Sacramento, but that we need to get more shows that are outside of just Sacramento and stuff. So I'm really excited. It's in Oakland, so I haven't played Oakland before.
So don't play sucky.
Yeah.
Because you'll get it.
Better bring my A game.
Well, you guys obviously get the new
game.
You got the new. Oh, that's nice. That might go in the intro of the segment. So more about the sound. We're going to be playing Into the Mouth of Madness later on the show, but you guys got a couple new tracks you threw my way. Myriad was an awesome one. Just comes out hard and aggressive. Tell us more about the sound of those two songs and kind of the way you guys are going, the direction.
Well, I don't know. Since I came into the group, I was like, must play harder. Must play groovier. And Ben was always along with that. And I think like Steve was like, yeah. And now he's like, okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah, that's cool. And Steve's hashing out some mean riffs. And then I come in and help put stuff together. And we're just, infusing our Pantera Meshuggah decapitated.
Got the
test
Pantera
mat.
shirt on as we speak, just so you know. That's how metal these guys are.
And then throwing in all our influences that we can, pay and respect.
Now, recently you guys played Ace of Spades, and the friends that I had there, the Insiders, told me you guys tore it up, one of the better bands there, and I think that's true when I go to the show. I mean, whoever you guys play with, you guys are one of the more hard-hitting, heavy bands there, and you guys play with crazy energy. Do you guys do meth? But on the stage,
I buy my stuff from Walter White. If anybody wants to know where he lives,
and
I
I
will give you
only
an
have
address.
one episode left until I can't anymore. The money made by Bon Jovi when they play on a tour is far superior to anything they make recording.
Yeah, we're halfway there.
Tell us, about the totally. You're on your way because you're playing Oakland next. But tell me more about the live show and being on stage and what you guys try to do.
Well, that's the one thing I told Steve when I came in. I play lead guitar now, but I came in on bass because they needed a bassist, and it was like Frankenstein men on stage. Like, let's be afraid up there and play our instruments, and that was every band. And I went up there like, no, you gotta lose your effing mind. And I was like, we gotta practice losing your effing mind. Every time you practice, do what you gotta do. And like now, everyone is like that because people pay to come see a show, and that's what we're gonna deliver.
Well, being on stage, I noticed you guys have all the cool hair when you're playing the guitars, and I keep cutting my hair for some reason. I'm trying to be professional. I'm not as cool.
I don't know what that's like. I don't understand.
Have you guys ever knocked heads together or anything?
I run into all these guys. I get my hair stuck in things. I'm running into people. I'm getting my foot stomped on. My singers almost kicked me off the stage before by accident. You just keep going.
Ben, I wanted to ask you, what's one of the crazier things that have happened at some of your shows? What's one show you went to where you're just like, this is outrageous?
It's never been to the point where I thought that's enough. But I've never thought to myself, hey, this needs to stop. So in that respect, I feel like it always gets kind of crazy, and every time. It feels like every show we get, there's more and more people. And I started taking pictures from behind the drum set because sometimes it's just with Animals. We played with Animals as leaders, and that was a huge show. And I had to take a picture of that because it was just there's so many people. Just well, I mean, I guess they weren't rocking out as much, but they're all dissecting what we did. But these other shows where you get these metalheads, it really, once you catch that groove and you start connecting with the audience, that's where crazy happens, and
Well, being a drummer, you have one of the interesting perspectives. Like you said, you take pictures from the drum set, but what's it like being on stage? And I feel, you guys might argue with me, but I feel like drums kind of carry the tunes most of the time. Like, the guitars can go off and do their things and be badass, but at the end of the day, the drums will bring them back in like, hey, we're playing this riff and tune. What do you see yourself as, like, a game manager kind of guy? What do you see?
It's a backbone deal. If I fuck up, it's noticeable, but we all do play off each other. So if there's room, for us to kind of carry each other and pick each other up, I was noticing at our last show that we really do have this kind of bond, and if one of us messes up, we're able to catch each other.
Yeah.
Scott, I wanted to ask you, being a person, an alumni of Musicians Institute.
Early, I went to school. I got schooled by all these amazing musicians, and I'm like, "Hey, I own your album. You're my teacher now." And I was nervous wreck, and now I got all that BS out of the way. I played a ton of shows in Los Angeles, just a ton of shows. So now I feel like when I'm up there's nothing that isn't going to surprise me.
Well, Legion's Requiem going to be playing the Screams of Metal 2 tour at the in Oakland on October 19th and 20th. You can check out Into the Mouth of Madness right now. We'll be back right after the tune to talk more with Legion's Requiem.
I've lived in darkness a long time. Over the years, my eyes adjusted until the dark became my world, and I could see.
Find SRMMA's Verbal Scrap podcast on iTunes and at srmma.com.